Hello everybody, I'm Anna. I'm Romanian by birth and a philosopher by training. I'm currently living in Rome, so I will speak under the direct shadow of the Vatican that I can see through my window. It's a good place to reflect on the ambiguous and difficult relationship between religion and politics. I would like to reflect today on Christ's sentence, "My kingdom is not of this world," from John 18:36, and ask what are the eschatological and the political consequences of this sentence. As a secondary related question, I would like to ask what roles the martyrs play in contesting power. My guide for this reflection will be the German theologian Erich Peterson. A scholar and an erudite, Erich Peterson, born in 1860, it's a historian of late antiquity. It's a New Testament exegete interested in Christian archaeology. He's mostly famous for contesting Carl Schmitt's theory on secularization. Carl Schmitt used to be his friend, but while Carl Schmitt was attracted to Nazism, Peterson started writing against Schmitt's perspective. According to Schmitt, all significant concepts of the modern theory of the state are secularized theological concepts. This implies that concepts like sovereign were transferred in the process of national state building from theology to the theory of the state. For example, the omnipotent God become, in 17th century political philosophy text, the omnipotent lawgiver. The works of Hobbes are a very good example of how this process looks like. If one takes a look towards the Middle Ages, it seems that Carl Schmitt theory is right. However, Erich Peterson, as a scholar of early Christianity, emphasized a very different aspect. He underlines that important concepts used by early Christians, such as martyrion, liturgia, ecclesia, even Basilea will become Basilea tu Theu, which means kingdom of God, are false political concepts used by Christians to construct a theological language. On Peterson's account, this original usage is a subversive one. Adopting political images and providing them with a different spiritual meaning means that the original Christian languages emphasize a contra-political theology. Peterson actually claims that Christianity deconstructs the theopolitical continuity between power and religion emphasized by civil religion in antiquity. Admitting the analogy between political and religious language that allowed this reutilization of political concepts in early Christianity, Peterson argued on the subverting role of this procedure against any power and any political system of this world. What he's doing is not just the genealogy of concepts, because saying that theological concepts are in their origin political concepts include a polemical stance. But this polemical stance is quite subtle. It doesn't mean a direct contestation with the same weapons as the empire has, but a transformative framework that relativizes political power by the power of one God. By contrast to the pagan culture, where the gods sustain the political power by their civil religion, also opposed to an image of a God as a warrior, Christianity is telling the story of another type of power, the power of words and of testimony. My first step in this analysis will be an article from 1929 of Peterson, who is focusing on the word paresia. Paresia, it's an important Greek concept that is translated into English by free speech. Etymologically, it means to say everything. The one who uses paresia, it's someone who says everything he has in mind. He do not hide anything, but open his heart completely. Paresia also implies a certain relationship between the truth teller and what he asserts. However, someone is said to use paresia only if there is a risk of danger in speaking his mind. A mathematician or a grammar who explain the rules of their domain do not use paresia. Although they say something true, this true sentence do not imply an existential threat. The paradigmatic example of paresia is when a philosopher addresses himself to a sovereign. In front of a tyrant, a philosopher who is telling a disturbing truth, an unpleasant truth. For instance, that the tyranny is incompatible with justice. In this situation, the philosopher speaks the truth, believes that he speaks the truth, and also there is this existential threat for him because the tyrant might exile or even kill him. The focus on Peterson is that martyrs use paresia, and they have both a political and religious virtue. On his study, he claims that this double type of paresia is described as first having paresia in front of public authority, and secondly, after death, in front of Christ. And based on this kind of paresia, martyrs will be the one who will judge the world with Christ. Accordingly, what is important in martyrdom is the duty to tell the truth, to give a correct witness, rather than the suffering that might imply. Witnessing for the truth is in this case a political activity, challenging the authority of political power. I remember that Peterson is writing these things while National Socialism reigns to power in his home country. Therefore, for him, Christians are witness to another imperium, the one in which the love of God and not the power of Caesar rules. What is more, Peterson emphasized that with Christianity emerged something new. In Christianity, paresia appears as a practice in and by a certain community. Through their witnessing, Christians constitute themselves into a community. Their act of witnessing form the bond of the community. Witnessing is in this way a practice that replaces other way of worshiping God, like following the Torah for the Jews or offering sacrifice for the pagans. To put it shortly, the one who practices paresia is a witness to the truth. And the Christian model for paresia is Christ in front of Pontius Pilate. But before analyzing this scene, let's do another stop. There is another article of Peterson from 1936 called Christ as Emperor, where Peterson explains that in the book of Revelation, Christ is portrayed as a contra-image of the emperor, both in a direct and indirect way. In a direct way by hymns, in which it said that he's the ruler of the kings of the earth. In an indirect way by symbols and metaphors borrowed from the imperial cult. The Son of Man in Apocalypse borrows images. The description of the Son of Man in Apocalypse borrows image from the imperial cult. But this image of Christ portrayed as a contra-image of the emperor has also polemical meaning. It suggests another way of life and of imagining power is possible. The eschatological hope for the kingdom to come is contrasting all kingdom of this world. Let me quote Petrache. We cannot understand the early concept of martyr without recognizing its connection with early Christian eschatology. Just reading Revelation will show this connection. Christ, who is Imperator, and Christians who belong to Militia Christi are symbols for a struggle from an eschatological imperium that is opposed to all imperia of this world. The eschatological imperium, the kingdom of God, it's subverting and destabilizing political power. This is maybe how we can understand Christ's sentence, "My kingdom is not from this world." Contemporary sociologists and anthropological studies emphasize that the body of martyrs stands as a political claim. The sacrificed body shows the limit of political power. Christians contribute to the fall of Roman Empire because their death emphasized the limit of political power. Therefore, martyrdom can be seen as a contra-political theology. Although the martyrs do not particularly want to put into question and to challenge the Roman political power, the sacrifice of his life is generating a contesting mechanism. The sacrifice body against the sovereign power. If the political power is the power to constrain the body, in front of an ability to sacrifice your own body, the political power becomes inoperative. By taking his risk, the martyr introduced an interruption between the monopoly of power who belongs to the sovereign and the monopoly of truth who belongs to the martyr. In a third article from 1937 called "Witness to the Truth," Petrache analyzed the encounter between Pilate and Jesus as a classical example of parousia. Let me read John 18:34-38. Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would be fighting so that I would not be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this realm." Therefore Pilate said to him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say correctly that I'm a king. For this purpose I have been born, and for this I have come into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth, listen to my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" So what does it actually mean to witness the truth? The term witness, martyrium, certainly comes from the legal language of antiquity. In a trial, a person testifies with his words, with his reputation, and with his person for the truth of a certain interpretation of reality. We are used to identify the term martyrs with those who died for Christian faith. But in fact, the heart of the stories lies not in their death, but in the risk of telling the truth. When the church speaks with piety and reverence about martyrs, it often forgets that the center is not the suffering, but the testimony. That things could be different than in the Roman Empire, or in the communist society, or in the progressive capitalist society. What actually matters is to live your life in such a way that others will take serious the truth you profess. I particularly like the fact that Jesus did not start preaching in front of Pilate. The truth is not in his discourse, but in his presence, in the way he incarnates a way of life, into the relationship between the person and life. Furthermore, Christ's witness is not a triumphalist one. It is a subverting one. It's the fragility who challenged the institutionalized violence of the empire. Petrach's interpretation of John 18 unified the royalty of Christ's eschatological promises and witnessing in front of political power. Since Christ is a king from another aeon, his mission is to give testimony about a realm where love of God and not the power of Caesar judges. By witnessing in front of political power of his time, Christ opened another perspective. He put light on a reality that is not political. During this encounter, Christ expressed his mission as being martyreo or aletheia. These terms are quite mysterious. Why the truth is not self-obvious? What kind of truth is that? That one needs someone to confess it. It is definitely a relational truth, a truth that is not hidden in a narrative, but in a relationship. The truth that Christ came to incarnate is disturbing and scandalous. It is expressed in terms of royalty and power. Using the term of his contemporary, Christ invests them with a new meaning. It even overturned the old meaning. Power does not mean the deification of the Roman Empire, but power belongs to God, and is supposed to be used in a non-violent way. Perhaps the expression martyr of the truth can be understood in a better, deeper sense if we read it as a witness of the eschaton, a witness of the coming kingdom that reverses the value of this world. The truth we are talking about can be read as eschatological. This means that we already participate in it by participating in the death and resurrection of Christ, but it's still a promise to the future to come. It's no wonder that the possibility of a different kind of kingdom called Pilate political power into question. That the very possibility of breaking the continuity of power is frightening to those in power, who do not know how to behave in a radical, non-violent way. Thank you for your attention.